Hello, hello, lovely souls. It's Sonia here with Fresh Approach Fitness, a wellness company, and welcome to episode number 68. I'm so excited to share this with you today. Been thinking about this podcast all morning, and it's going to be a little different than normal, but I know you're going to appreciate it because it's what happens when. That's the title. That's the title and the subject of today's podcast. So it's going to be what happens when, a variety of different ideas, a different action steps, different movements, but you're going to see what happens when. So stay tuned. It's August 9th, 2021, and I am so excited to have you here today. Let's start first by checking in. How was your weekend? How was 2 or 3 days off if you do take time off over the weekend? Where's your mindset at? This weekend I did have Friday off. I did work quite a bit on my business on Friday, which felt amazing. I love doing what I do. And I know you all know that. You actually wouldn't be chiming in listening to this podcast if you, and if this is your first time, then welcome. But if this is not your first time, then you definitely know by now that I absolutely love doing what I do. I consider myself a multi-purpose entrepreneur. And it wasn't until I read a book not that long ago where I heard that title. And ever since I heard that title, I owned it because that is exactly who I am. I am a multi-purpose entrepreneur. I do like to take action in a variety of different elements of my life. It's not one thing that makes me happy. It's not one thing that I bring income from. It's not one thing that I like to do. And I would challenge you today, as you're listening to this podcast and as you're heading into your week, to think about what other areas of your life do you want to excel at, or do you excel at, and that you do nothing about because it's not your job. You know, do you, for instance, and I'm gonna lean in here to the stuff I like, but do you like to mix different essential oils and use those as remedies? Do you put essential oils on every day to set your stage? Do you like to read? Do you like to write? Do you like to go on nature walks? Think about some of these different areas of your life that you enjoy spending your time, or where you enjoy creating, or where you just enjoy being. Most importantly, though, I want you to take those thoughts and think about when you share your level of excitement with others. So, for instance, I really love writing. I didn't realize how much I loved writing until I made some commitments to write more books. So far this year, I've done 2 contemplation books, which means I've co-authored in 2 books. I actually submitted my 3rd chapter to a 3rd book last week, which is phenomenal. I will be working on getting guest speakers in who I've co-written with, so you can learn their stories and their experience as well. But guys, here's something super exciting that I haven't shared too much of. I have put together a woman's self-love, self-awareness workbook. It is now available on Kindle. You can download the whole workbook to your Kindle or to your phone, and it's called Your Story Matters. It's a self-love, self-awareness workbook, and my goodness, you're going to love this. What happens when? What happens when you take a look at this book and you see the download and you start doing the work, my friends? What happens when you start seeing the results of even thinking differently? So today's topic, as I mentioned, is called What Happens When? And it was inspired by what I discovered this weekend, especially yesterday, which was Sunday. And I'm going to jump right into this. I got up, did my regular routine. Now, my regular routine isn't as structured on the weekends as it is during the week. So yes, I'll meditate, but I likely won't do movement on the weekends, and I don't always meditate on the weekends because I find that I will sit outside and just kind of let my thoughts go wherever. So kind of like daydream and not hold my breath, but breathe. And so I am already subconsciously meditating on the weekends. I don't intentionally always use my Calm app to do that. And yes, I'm not sponsored by Calm, but I do use the Calm app. I do have some free sessions I can send people. If you are interested in that, let me know. Just drop me a link and I can send you my access to Calm, and you can discover for yourself to see if this is something that you're interested in or if it's going to help you with pausing and reflecting a little bit in your life. But that's not what this is about. No, that's not what this is about at all. So what happens when I did that, though, is it means I was able to move on to the next step. The next step for me on Sunday was, honestly, thinking of, okay, now what? What do I want to do? What needs to get done is typically the first thing that comes into my mind. But on Saturday, Tony and I had spent the time sharing the chores outside and getting work that needed to be done. So when it came to Sunday, even though we just spent half of Saturday morning doing this, it wasn't even the full day. It wasn't a lot of time. It was just done together, and that part was nice because typically we don't run on the same time schedule, just so you know. And I can't be the only one that's like this, but typically we have opposite ends of the spectrum. We are not the same person. We have different delivery methods and different expectations. And it was really, really nice to work in conjunction with one another and getting the weeding done, making the plants look good, the yard work that needed to be done. And it just felt really good. And then we could spend the rest of the day doing other projects or chores or things that needed to be done. In his case, he went to Toronto to pick up Nathan at the airport. You've heard me talk about him before. He actually spent a week in Florida doing some intense sports training. Super proud of him. Whereas I got to spend the afternoon with my daughter and my grandson. And we went to the beach. We bumped into a few people. It was gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Guys, what happens when you spend time doing what needs to be done, you build that into your day, and suddenly you have time to spare? I know this is a little bit of an anomaly right now, but what if you change your routine and mix it up so it can be possible? How different would your life look if you had guilt-free time to enjoy life? So we're back on to Sunday, and I'm trying to think of what happened next because it was just yesterday, but I believe I was on my phone for a little bit. And then I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? The laundry's done. The house is clean. We had a good breakfast. And literally, I grabbed my work stuff, my planning, my Creative Collections book, which is one of the next books I'm putting together for everybody. I use it myself, though. So as I use it every single day, I fine-tune some little changes. So I bring it outside along with a little bit of work. And literally, I am going through my week of what I've done so far in August and my month of what I've done so far. And I am super impressed with the fact that I am able, at this point, second week of August, I am able to take the time to review and to plan ahead. Guys, this is what happens when we stay consistent, we track our efforts, and we know where we're going. What happens when is an amazing segue to your day. It reminds you as to what you're doing this all for. And eventually there's going to be a finish line. For the longest time, I'd say for years and years, I wouldn't even be able to see the outcome that I wanted. Who can when we're in the midst of chaos, the midst of doing the work? But for those that were listening to the last episode that I talked about, the flashlight experience, when it talked about decluttering and organizing and setting the stage and preparing, now that I've done that work, I have the space in the room and the mindset to think clearly and to be proactive. I'm not sitting in a reactive state in my life right now. I am sitting in a proactive place where I can now prepare for what's to come. And that comes in so many different ways. So let's fast forward to yesterday afternoon. I was cleaning out the fridge as I was doing the meal prep for the week, typical. Actually, our week looked a little bit different this time. But definitely the eggs and chopping up the vegetables and preparing the strawberries and seeing what needs to be ready for the week so we can have everything ready to grab and go. Because although I work from home, my days are pretty tight and my schedule's pretty tight. So it doesn't matter if you work from home or if you work out of the office or if you have younger kids, the same things apply. The more you can be prepared, the more you're going to give yourself that space of what happens when. What happens when you want to go out and do something and you have everything ready. In my case, I made a batch of soup. So I noticed that there was some leftover chicken in the fridge from last week. And it wasn't a week old yet, but it was pretty close to it. So I knew I needed to do something with it, either throw it out or freeze it. So last night I decided to make a chicken noodle soup. Who doesn't love a chicken noodle soup? Every once in a while, homemade, it's good. And that is now prepared in the freezer in Ziploc bags that I can go ahead and pull out any day that we are busy, right? I can pull it out any day, thaw it out for a little bit, or just thawed out enough to put it in the Instapot, and it would take maybe half an hour to go from thawed to cooked to reheated because it's already cooked, right? So now that I have freed up my time and I'm no longer in a reactive space, I am able to be proactive and prepare for what's to come. This means I am making so many other decisions that are in alignment with the direction that I want to be in. So what happens when you have time to meal prep? You are saving yourself time throughout the week, right? You are not spending extra money. And remember, for most of us listening to this, the 4 pillars that we work on here are meal set, movement, mindset, and money. Not necessarily in that order. For those that have been listening to this or following me a little bit along on social media, my order that I follow daily is mindset, movement, meals, and then I go and make the money. And when I'm making the money, I am actually thinking of my future. I'm not just thinking of my now. If I was thinking of my now, that would be short-sighted thinking. That would maybe be a job that makes a lot more money, but creates a lot more stress in my life. I don't want stress in my life at all. I don't know about you, but stress is not welcome in my realm. I actually love what I do, and my base salary is okay, nothing to complain about. And I'm very, very thankful every day, and that's the difference, right? What happens when you get to do what you love? How does that change your output on the day-to-day? Most of us are chasing that short-term dollar. But what if you do what you love and you're still, so in my case, I'm still serving people. I still get to help people live healthier lives, live better lives. For me, that is more important than anything. So I get to do that. And it's what happens when I think differently. So yes, of course, I could go and find a job that pays me more, that might address a topic about making more money short term. But that's not that's not the life I'm trying to create. I'm not trying to create a life of financial abundance through one source. I am trying to create a well-rounded, balanced life where I have the energy and the desire to continue to do what I want on the daily. So think about this. There are so many different ways that you can make money. There are so many different ways that you can enjoy what you're doing. What happens when you take a step back, write it all out, and think differently? Are you in the right work environment for you? Are you thriving? Are you being challenged? Are you growing? Are you happy? Do you have an opportunity to make a difference in this world? Where else can you make up for the space if you're not being 100% fulfilled in this particular area? I'd like you to really think about that because there's so much you can open up your mind to. And just think about that. Think about the options. It's recommended, and I've shared this before, it's recommended that in order to be financially successful and financially stable in life, we need to have anywhere between 5 to 7 sources of income. different sources of income because we don't want all of our eggs in one basket. And when we're using our primary job as our primary source of income and our only source of income because it covers everything, and maybe it's helping you with investments and it's taking your time, like maybe it's working for you, what happens when there's an end in sight? We all know by now that nothing, of course, Gizmo's going to play with his toy. As I'm doing this podcast, I might have to lock myself in the office as I'm pacing around the house. Did y'all hear that? Squeak! Okay, let me go back to what I was chatting about. We all know that everything is temporary in this life. Everything. It's a different world than what it was from when our parents were smaller and even our grandparents. You know, the word loyalty when it comes to employment is different. It's not looked at as a person to person. It's looked at as you are a fit for now to do this job, right? And what happens when things change? What happens when you get injured or stressed or overwhelmed or exhausted? What happens when you need to take time off to take care of yourself? You know for a fact, and if you don't know, this is going to be a shock for you. You know for a fact, and I'm pretty sure you know for a fact already, that if something were to happen to you, you would be replaced within a week. Heaven forbid something happened, you would be replaced at that job within a week. Maybe a month, but your coworkers would pick up the pieces in the short term until they find the perfect fit to replace you, or they find somebody to replace you. And it doesn't matter how long you've been there. And I'm not trying to be negative, but reality is what happens when this too changes. And if this is your primary source of income, and this is the only egg you have in your income basket, we need to talk. Because I would much rather see you do a job that you are happy at, that might make you a little bit less, but you're diversifying your time, your energy, your resources. Because my friends, we don't know how long we have. We are given this gift of life every single day. And for those that have had any kind of hardship, they appreciate the growth and the mindset as to where they're at today and the gift that this truly is. They appreciate that every single thing that comes into our life, every conversation was meant to happen. And we don't always see that on the onset. We don't always see that in the moment. And we certainly don't see that in the moment of hardship. We need those hardships to make us stronger. And we all have different levels. We need to stop and think about ourselves. And I'm not turning this into a self-centered conversation, woman power and this and that. Not at all my intention. My intention is what happens when, right? What happens when we set ourselves up for success? What happens when we think differently? What happens when we take the time to take care of ourselves? What happens when we are no longer in the space of being reactive, but we are now being proactive? So let's go back into last night. Tony and I are preparing for the week, and he decides, because we were talking about this the other day, he decides to make meatballs because we've learned that being at home so much and eating from home, we are choosing to rather make something that we like and enjoy versus going to buy something that we know isn't going to taste as well. Homemade meatballs are 100% better, 100% better than any store-bought meatballs. Period. Hands down. Wow. Right? Like you can taste the meat in the meatballs. And it doesn't matter what flavor you use. You can use chicken or turkey or meat or pork. It doesn't matter. Or ground beef or pork. You can taste the meat. You can taste the filling. You're not just tasting the filling. It's not tasting like sawdust. It is tasting like meatballs. So last night while I'm making the soup, he's making meatballs. And we're sitting here bantering and talking, and it just felt so good. We were joking around. So what happens when you're relaxed, guys? Let's talk about this. What happens when you're relaxed? What happens when you're happy? We spent the day yesterday bantering playfully back and forth and joking. And I said to him last night in bed, I'm like, I liked the way you made me laugh yesterday because we were just being cheeky and fun and just having a good, playful time together. And when was the last time you let yourself relax enough to do that? Whether at home with your partner, at work with your peers, with your kids, when was the last time you didn't have to be on? And I know on's a bad word, like in terms of this example, because I don't want us feeling like we're on all the time, but we are. We are always on guard. There's so many things that we are trying to do at once. So many different areas of expectations, areas of improvement, not being good enough, wanting to climb the corporate ladder. What happens when we pause? If you guys could see me, you'd be laughing right now because as soon as I said the word pause, it was kind of like playing freeze tag when we were kids, when we were running around playing and somebody would, or playing museum and you'd have to stop and be a statue. Do you remember that? So I did that even though I was pacing around the house, and I said the word pause. It was kind of funny. Well, obviously it was kind of funny or I wouldn't have shared. But here's the thing. When we pause, when we let ourselves go, we get to enjoy the moment and the people we're with. What happens when we do that more often? We bring more of that joy into our life, right? We bring more of that happiness into our life. We bring more of that laughter into our life. So what happens when we plan ahead? We create space for the future. We create time. And time is one of those, you're like, probably like, how are we creating time? I can see this question right now. How are we creating time? We're actually, maximizing the time we have today to save time for tomorrow. That's exactly what we're doing. So it's not like we're creating more time, but we're able to use our time differently, a lot more effectively. We're able to use our time for different purposes, maybe to make us money. Maybe to do something else instead of just our full-time jobs. Maybe we're able to create space where we're not rushing to grab the first thing that we see to eat, but instead we're able to make a mindful decision because we're in a better mindset. Maybe now we have just freed up enough time to go for a 10-minute run. Oh, speaking of 10-minute runs, what happens when you take years to heal and recover and you can finally make a choice and have a conversation in your head as, do I get to try to run tonight or should I try to run tomorrow? Guys, this happened to me last night. We had dinner and then we took the kids out for ice cream. We had Nathan and his girlfriend over. We took them out for ice cream and we came back and Tony needed to get a few things done. And I'm like, well, I go and get changed. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm going to try that run walk thing I did the other day. And he's like, you are? I'm like, I am. Like, I'm going to try it again. So for me, for those that are brand new, I've had Achilles problems for 3 years now. It's been about 3 years since I've been able to run, 3 years since I've been in physio, 3 years that I've been extremely restricted. Even last year when COVID hit, and most people were able to get out and about to go for a walk, I wasn't able to do that. I haven't really gone grocery shopping in a year and a half because I can't stand in line at a grocery store without my feet burning and just stand still. And when I don't know how long the lines are. So you have to understand what happens when we pause, take action to what needs to be done immediately, take the time to recover. I am now able to have a conversation with myself and maybe even out loud about a commitment to take better care of myself and to try to do something I love. So yeah, I did it. This is like 3 times over the course of last week where I alternate running and walking, go around the block twice. So the first 5 minutes I'm walking, then I run nice and easy for a minute, then I walk for a minute and I alternate until I've done the 2 blocks. Now it's easy to want to do more, right? Of course it is. I feel good. I put my foot down. But that's not the point. The point is I can do what I can right now, see how I'm emotionally and physically responding to the fact that I can move my body in this direction in this way, and understand that this too will come back together at the right time. So what happens when we pause and give ourselves the self-care and the self-love that we need makes a huge difference in our lives. We might not see it now. We might not see the creativity that showed up during that other space where I wasn't training or chasing hardware in terms of metals or eating differently because I had to. I had to go back and re-experience a brand new lifestyle. I had to go back and really evaluate exactly what I truly wanted and what it looked like. If running and being active to that degree, not just teaching classes, which is pretty amazing, helping others is pretty amazing, but leading by example really, I don't even know the words, makes me feel good from the inside out. I don't even really know the words when I lead by example. It just makes me feel like I'm doing exactly what I meant to be doing. I'm natural at it. I'm not a natural athlete. I became an athlete in my late 30s. That's when my journey started. I was always a swimmer and I was always interested in sports, but my athleticism didn't surface until my late 30s. And now I'm in my late 40s, as you know. So you never know, right? What happens when you have time to breathe? What happens when you have time to heal? What happens when you take control over your life and it doesn't control you? Yesterday, I had the space and freedom for the first time in a long time to sit and pause and think about what should I do next versus everything that needed to be done. That is revolutionary, my friends. That is a new stage. That means I'm entering a new level of my life and I embrace it. I welcome it and I would love to hear how this impacts you too. When you let yourself go, when you write down at the beginning of your journal, or once my Creative Collections book gets done and I've got the affirmation page in there and you can take a look at what it looks like to you, maybe start asking yourself every single day right now, what happens when, ... and make that your check-in point. Make that your check-in. I am super excited to hear from you what some of your goals are that you want to work on. And then let's talk about this. I invite you to reach out, Sonya, SONYA, at freshapproachfitness.ca. Remember, I'm Canadian. It's a Canadian company. And, the topic of the subject line for the email that you decide to send me can be, what happens when? And let's chat. Tell me your goals. Tell me what you would love to get to. I do consider myself a dream catcher, helping you achieve time freedom, elevated finances, and balanced energy. So when it comes to you living your dream life, what does that look like? Are you living bits and pieces of your dream life today? We did groceries, and I'm going to end this on this story, but we did groceries yesterday. Well, Tony did groceries yesterday, and I haven't shared all of the details of our relationship, but I actually pay for the groceries. It's the bill in the house that I pay for. I moved into this house, and he's covering all of the other expenses, including the mortgage, and I pay the groceries. Could be a sweet deal, right? Yeah. We're feeding an athlete. It's not a sweet deal. It's a nice average split deal. Some days it's a little bit more shocking to see the price point. Food's gone up. Not sure why. Actually, I do know why. Delivery, transportation, the economy, all of that has driven the food prices up. It's not just a matter of them gouging people that can't afford it. But, he came home with the bill and gave my bank card and he went and paid. No big deal. But he does kind of let me know what it is. I mean, I can always log on and see what it is, right? But he told me the bill. He's like, oh, I can't believe it's this expensive again. I'm like, let's change that story. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I said, let's change that story. Instead of, I can't believe how much it is, I'm thankful that we can afford it. I'm grateful that every single week we can afford the grocery bill, no matter what it is. Think about that. You can't complain and be grateful at the same time. And I'm not picking on Tony because I do it all the time myself. And it was just my mindset that changed recently on this. I could easily get frustrated that the cost of life is so much right now and where we're at. But the fact of the matter is, doing what I love, I get to still provide for the family in terms of nourishment. And that's important to me. That is really, really, really important to me. The fact that I can afford that is huge. It might be most of my paycheck, but whatever. Whatever. The point is, I can bring money in other areas of my life, and I do. And I do that because I love to. What happens when you think differently? What happens when you replace frustration with gratitude? Think about that. Let's end on that note today. It's about 30 minutes, this podcast. I thank you once again for being a part of this. And I would love to hear your comments, your feedback, and anything that you're willing to share. Make it a fantastic week, my friends. Keep growing. Keep glowing.